Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday the 10th of November comes to you from London. And yesterday I said if you've got any requests, just let me know. And one of my clients actually has given me a list of things that he'd like me to track. He's using the targets, he's new to the targets, he'd just like to see how I use them. So I'm very happy to record this here and share this with you. And again, I'm always happy to cover things that people want. And remember that you can watch this on chartstoday.com or YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube or Charts Today, remember to follow me on LinkedIn, where I post lots of charts each day. So we start by just looking at his list of things. And what's really good about this client is that he's made it really easy for me, because he's told me that his time horizon is somewhere between 2 weeks and a month. So that means that I'd be looking at short-term charts, which is 60-minute charts, thinking about days ahead, and daily charts thinking about weeks ahead. And I might have a look at the long-term chart, and if I really see a critical situation, I might go right down to the short-term chart. But this idea of time horizon is really critical, and the unit sizes that we use for the targets are aligned to those charts. So that's really key. And remember, a short-term trader might consider that long-term is days and weeks, and a long-term investor might consider that short-term is weeks. So we have to just remember that the best thing to do is to define these time horizons. The daily chart is the medium term. That means weeks ahead. We're looking back months. The short-term chart's a 60-minute chart. We're thinking days ahead. And the long-term chart is a weekly chart where we're thinking months and years ahead. So that's really the way to remember to resolve this. Now, he's given me the list. He's given me a list of several things. He started with the euro. He said, how are you using the targets on the euro dollar? Now, the interesting thing is on the daily chart, there aren't really any targets. There was one given back in September that was met. What that means, for a 0.5% unit size, 0.5% of the price, we have not had any uninterrupted buying or selling thrusts, and then a reversal and an activation. So we just haven't had targets on the daily chart. We could go down to smaller unit sizes and we would get some, but we might as well just look straight to the 60-minute chart, which is the short term. And we see, really interestingly, we had this thrust target given on the 1st of November. That gave us an upside target. We started to move towards that target, but we've diverged away from it. So we can look at this target now and say, realistically, this target is not really exciting or valid. And we have now got a downside target. It's in orange because we haven't moved below the low point of that thrust to activate the target. If we do move to a new low, we then activate to 105. So that will be interesting. But in terms of the weeks and days ahead, we go back to the daily chart. We are below the cloud. So it does mean that we are seeing euro weakness, dollar strength. So we're seeing at 106, we've been as 107, and we are just struggling. We found support at 104.50, but we are still below the cloud. So medium term bearish the euro, short term we've just potentially moving back to bearish. So that just does set us up. Now, if you're at a critical point, you can look at the 1 minute chart, and we see here we've set the targets to 10 units of slope. I normally use 2 units as my default, but for 1 minute charts, it will take longer for these targets to be met in terms of the time frame of minutes. And see, we have these downside targets here given, and now we've got this downside target that is not really in train anymore because we've got these new upside targets. So we are seeing the euro just today looking a little bit stronger. Now, if it's not your time horizon and you're not trading euro, then you probably won't be looking at this chart. But if you hit a critical point, like you want to know, are we going to go through that level here? Are we going to go through that level? That's when you go to the 1 minute chart and say, for the moment, we're looking a little bit safe. Of course, you can also just apply the key levels, and that's just telling us the range that we need to focus on: new highs, new lows. These are set off the highs and lows for the last 24 hours. So really quite key there. We are just in this little sideways range. So that's the euro. He asked me to cover the S&P. Now, the interesting thing about the S&P is it's actually quite hard to get data for the S&P, and I'm not sure which data service this client is using. Remember, we're compatible with dozens of different data services. You just configure the ones that you've got, but one that everyone has is Yahoo, and it's always quite a good backup. and it does have the daily S&P, not the 60-minute, just the daily. So I can look at the daily chart. It's quite hard to get intraday data without paying the exchange fees, especially if you're a professional. So looking at the daily chart, I just hit the T key and it puts the trends and targets on automatically. It's using a 0.5% box size, which I used for the daily, and these were the thrusts. It took longer to get there. Now we could curve fit this. We could say, okay, it's actually taking much longer to get to these targets, and I can actually adjust them, and we will see that then adjusts the targets, and the same here with the downside target. So you could curve fit the data if you wanted, but the reality is I just used the 2 times. We've got this downside target at the moment that is active. This might give us a new buying thrust, or more importantly, it might be setting us up for the next selling thrust. There's the first selling thrust. We might be seeing a new selling wave. Now, if you want to look at intraday data, what I do is I look at the E-mini future on the S&P, and it just does give me a little bit of a heads up. We have just moved back below the 60-minute cloud, so that's quite key. Here's the downside target. Again, we don't have any downside targets on the 60-minute chart at the moment. Now, there was this initial thrust target. We will probably get a new target coming in here. If I changed the unit size to a smaller one, I would get more targets. So that's one of the things you can do if you're looking for targets. So that's the S&P E-mini. But what I also want to do is look at the Nasdaq. Now, this client didn't specify for me to look at the Nasdaq, but I wanted to just take a quick look at the Nasdaq. We've got this downside target there, and he's also asked me to cover some tech stocks. Gold, also asked for me to cover gold. Downside the gold chart, we've got this downside target at the moment. We are waiting for an upside target to be activated, but this is the target that's in train. If we move higher than this 1963 level, we will activate that chart. And again, you could look at the long-term chart for gold. If we make new highs in gold, then we're going to push much, much higher. So that's also pretty interesting. So the other chart he asked me to look at is Colgate. So really quite key here. We've got an upside target on the short-term chart and on the daily chart, and we're just crossing the cloud, so looking pretty good there. Apple, we've talked about Apple quite a lot. It's got an upside target on the short term, 8% higher, but these downside ones hanging over us. Don't be surprised to see new sell-off there, lower highs, lower lows, and producing a new confirming target. But for the moment, short term, it's looking okay. But these time frames are fighting each other. If we look to Boeing, we've got the Boeing chart here, another one that was specified. Target's kind of been met, downside target been met, found a floor, but a little bit of a hard read there. And if we look at IBM, this is one of the better looking charts. We've got the 60-minute chart there. We're still above the cloud, which a lot of tech stocks aren't. Do have a downside target, but we're above the cloud on both time frames, looking a bit better. Hopefully that helps you out. I'm here to look at anything you want. Remember to like this if you would like me do it. If you're watching this on YouTube or somewhere else, follow me on LinkedIn on my profile page where I post charts all the time. Like or share this, very grateful. And any comments, I'm happy to answer any comments that you have, cover anything you like, and remember just to follow me. Have a great weekend. Until Monday, happy charting. See you then.